Just put it in, what's the worst that could happen? Alien girls dare. Darkness pressed in, heavy, cold. Then a low hum vibrated through metal into bone, eyes cracked open. Blurry shapes swam in dim green light, a weight on his chest. Panic fluttered a trapped bird. He tried to lift a hand. Didn't work. Strapped down. Right, great. A silhouette leaned over him. Tall, indistinct edges against the gloom. Featureless face, a smooth, dark curve reflecting the sickly light. Inhuman. Subject designation, Rorik 7. Vital signs stabilizing. The voice was female but flat, completely neutral, like a machine reading a script. He swallowed, throat felt like sandpaper. Where? Recovery Pod Delta. Your vessel, the Wanderer, sustained critical damage during unscheduled atmospheric entry. She didn't look at him, focused on a display floating near her shoulder. Read his file already, apparently. No point asking who she was. Figures, unscheduled atmospheric entry, code for we crashed. Badly. Damage assessment, he rasped. Need to know. Survival instinct kicked in, overriding the disorientation. Catastrophic structural failure, life support critical, limited habitable zones remain. She adjusted something strapped to his arm. A cool pressure bloomed. Sedation protocols are concluding. The weight on his chest was a restraint bar. He tested it. Solid. Can you get this off? Negative. Mobility assessment required post-diagnostic. A thin beam of light, colder than the green ambient glow, swept from his head to his feet. Felt like being scanned at a checkout counter. Just inventorying the damaged goods. He clenched his jaw, trapped, scanned, by whatever she was. Her suit was dark, seamless, absorbing the light. No rank, no insignia, just efficient, unnerving presence. Diagnostic complete, she stated. Minor contusions, no fractures detected, internal bruising consistent with high G deceleration. She reached across him, her movements precise, economical. Her arm brushed his shoulder, cool through his thin shirt, unsettlingly solid. He flinched involuntarily. She paused, her blank faceplate angled slightly toward him. Physiological reaction noted, elevated heart rate, adrenaline spike, indicates source of distress. Source of distress, you, this place, everything. Just startled, he managed, not used to being strapped down. Restraint necessary during initial recovery phase. She didn't apologize, didn't explain further, just facts. Her hand went to the buckle near his hip. A click echoed in the small space. The bar lifted. Freedom, sort of. He pushed himself up, swinging his legs over the side of the narrow cot. The deck plating was cold beneath his bare feet. His head swam. He braced a hand against the cot's edge. Mobility assessment commencing, she announced, stepping back half a pace. Still too close. The pod felt cramped, barely bigger than a closet. Her height made it feel even smaller. Stand, walk 3 paces forward, turn, return. Like a sobriety test, at the end of the world. He pushed off, swayed, but found his balance. Took the 3 steps. The deck vibrated faintly. Turn. Felt her gaze even through the blank faceplate. 3 steps back. His muscles protested, stiff and sore. Assessment satisfactory. Minor instability detected. Proceed with caution. She gestured toward the pod's hatch. Evacuation protocol initiated. Sector integrity is degrading. Evacuation to where? He glanced around. No windows, just metal walls, blinking lights, the hum. Designated safe zone Gamma. Follow designated route. The hatch hissed open, revealing a narrow corridor, equally dim, lit by emergency strips along the floor. Air escaping. A faint, high-pitched whine started up somewhere distant. Degrading fast, then. Lead the way, he said, trying to inject some confidence he didn't feel. She moved past him into the corridor without a word. Her movements were fluid, almost unnervingly silent despite her apparent mass. He followed, his bare feet slapping softly on the cold metal. The air tasted stale, metallic. He shivered, suddenly aware he was only wearing thin pants and a t-shirt, great survival gear. The corridor twisted. Debris littered the floor, panels, wires, unidentifiable chunks of metal. She navigated it effortlessly. He stumbled over a warped strut. "Caution advised," she stated, not turning back. "Thanks, super helpful." He caught himself on the wall, grimy, cold. The distant whine grew louder, punctuated by groaning sounds, metal under stress, bad sounds. She stopped abruptly at a junction. Two corridors branched off. One flickered with failing lights, the other was darker, seemingly intact. She consulted a device strapped to her wrist, its light briefly illuminating the underside of her faceplate, still blank, impassive. Route recalculation necessary. Primary path compromised by structural collapse. She indicated the darker passage. Secondary route viable. Increased environmental hazards anticipated. "Hazards like what?" he asked, anxiety tightening his chest. "Atmospheric contaminants, unstable structural elements, potential energy surges." She listed them like ingredients in a recipe. No emotion, just data. "Sounds delightful, a walk in the park." He took a breath. "All right, let's go." Anything was better than standing here waiting for the ceiling to fall in. She entered the darker corridor. He followed close behind. The air felt thicker here, damper. A low thrumming vibrated through the deck, different from the ship's hum, more primal, worrying. He brushed against something soft hanging from the ceiling. Recoiled, just loose insulation. His heart hammered, "Get a grip." She paused again, holding up a hand. He almost walked into her. Stopped just short, his nose inches from her back. Felt the faint coolness radiating off her suit. Trapped again briefly. "Energy fluctuations detected ahead," she reported. "Proceeding requires shield modulation." She tapped her wrist device. A faint shimmer enveloped her for a second, then vanished. "My suit offers limited protection. Yours does not." "No kidding. What does that mean for me?" "Maintain minimum safe distance. Avoid contact with energized surfaces." She pointed. Ahead, faint blue arcs danced between exposed conduits dangling from the ceiling. Crackling sounds joined the low thrum. "Minimum safe distance," he muttered. In this hallway, it was barely wide enough for her to pass comfortably. He'd have to scrape the walls. "Affirmative. Proximity threshold is approximately 0.5 meters. "Half a meter, right." He eyed the sparking wires. "This is going to suck." She moved forward slowly, deliberately. He followed, pressing himself against the opposite wall, trying to make himself small. The metal was freezing. The air crackled with static electricity, raising the hairs on his arms. A larger arc snapped overhead. He flinched, ducking instinctively. His shoulder bumped her side. Hard contact, solid, unyielding. A faint vibration tingled through the point of contact, like touching a live wire, but cold. He jerked back against the wall. "Sorry." She didn't react, didn't pause. "Maintain distance," she repeated, her tone unchanged, clinical. "Yeah, trying here." They cleared the sparking section. The corridor opened slightly into a small junction, lit by a single, sputtering emergency lamp. Debris was piled high against one wall. She stopped, scanning the area. "Life sign detected, non-hostile, injured." She moved toward the debris pile. He followed cautiously. Peeking over her shoulder, he saw a leg sticking out from under a heavy metal plate. Uniform matched his own. Wanderer crew. Looked bad. She knelt, effortlessly sliding a hand under the edge of the plate. He expected her to strain. She didn't. She lifted it smoothly, steadily, exposing the trapped crewman. Male, young, face pale, eyes closed, breathing shallow. Multiple fractures. Internal bleeding suspected, she assessed, running a handheld scanner over him. The device chirped grimly. "Can we help him?" Rorik asked, kneeling beside her, close quarters again. Her shoulder almost brushed his. He could feel the faint hum of her suit. "Medical intervention required exceeds current capabilities. Stabilization possible." She produced a small kit from a compartment on her thigh, efficient movements, syringe, patch. She worked quickly, clinically. The crewman groaned, eyes fluttering open. He focused blearily on Rorik, commander. Rorik wasn't the commander, just a mid-level tech. Easy, son, we'll get you out. He glanced at the alien woman. Could they? She applied a biofoam patch to the man's crushed leg. Transport is inadvisable. Structural instability prohibits safe extraction. The crewman's eyes widened slightly, fixing on her blank faceplate. Fear flickered there. What is that? Designation, Unit 734. Assisting evacuation, she replied directly to the injured man, her voice as flat as ever. Unit 734. Catchy. Rorik thought so. She's military, rescue, or just inventory. We can't just leave him, Rorik insisted, looking at her. Negative. Leaving him increases his survival probability. Moving him risks catastrophic exsanguination and further injury from environmental collapse. Logic. Cold and hard. The injured man coughed, a wet rattling sound. Go, sir, get out. Rorik hesitated. Survival instinct warred with something else. Guilt, duty, pointless sentiments now. He is correct, Unit 734 stated, standing up. Time is critical. Sector collapse imminent. The distant groaning intensified. Dust sifted from the ceiling. No choice, damn it. All right, Rorik said, his voice tight. He looked down at the crewman. Hang in there, we'll send help. A lie, they both knew it. The crewman just closed his eyes. Unit 734 was already moving toward the only clear exit. Rorik pushed himself up, a bitter taste in his mouth. He took one last look back, then followed her. The corridor ahead seemed even darker. Survival first, always, the thought felt hollow. The floor tilted suddenly. A low roar echoed from behind them. He stumbled, grabbing the wall for support. Unit 734 barely seemed to notice the shift, adjusting her stance smoothly. Structural failure cascade initiated, she announced calmly. Increase pace. Easy for you to say. He pushed off the wall, forcing his aching legs to move faster, jogging now, dodging debris in the near darkness. Breathing hard. The air was getting thicker, dustier, hard to see. He ran almost blindly, trusting her dark silhouette ahead. He misjudged a patch of slick fluid on the deck. Feet went out from under him, cursed silently as he hit the floor hard, shoulder taking the brunt. Pain flared. Before he could even try to get up, strong hands clamped onto his upper arm, hauling him to his feet. Unit 734. Her grip was like steel, jarring, efficient. No wasted motion. Maintain footing, she ordered, already moving again, pulling him along slightly. He wrenched his arm free, stumbling but staying upright. I can walk. Annoyance flared through the fear and pain. Being manhandled, even efficiently, grated. She didn't respond, just kept moving at a relentless pace. The groaning of metal was louder now, closer. Cracks spiderwebbed across the ceiling panels overhead. They reached another hatchway, thicker, reinforced. She slapped a control panel beside it. Nothing happened. Dead. Manual override required. She knelt, prying open a service panel below the controls. Wires sparked inside. Just keeps getting better. He leaned against the bulkhead, catching his breath, watching her work. Her fingers moved with impossible speed and precision, manipulating the damaged circuitry. Tools he didn't recognize appeared from hidden compartments on her suit. A sudden, violent tremor shook the entire section. Lights flickered wildly, then died, plunging them into absolute darkness save for the faint glow from her tools and the sparks within the panel. Metal screamed nearby. Hold this. Her voice still flat but maybe tighter. She pressed something small and cylindrical into his hand. Cool metal, a light source. He fumbled with it, found the activation stud. A narrow beam cut through the oppressive darkness, illuminating her hands as they worked. Focused. Fast. Another tremor, stronger this time. He braced himself against the wall. Dust rained down. He coughed, waving a hand in front of his face. The light beam trembled. "Panel integrity compromised," she stated, her voice slightly distorted by static. "Forced entry necessary." She drew back her fist. "She's going to punch it." She struck the panel beside the fried controls. Not a punch. A precise, powerful blow with the heel of her hand. Metal buckled inward with a sharp crack. She struck again. The hatch shuddered. A third strike. The hatch groaned, popped inward a few inches, stuck. Insufficient clearance. She braced her shoulder against the buckled edge, pushed. Muscles he couldn't see must have bunched under the dark suit. Metal screeched in protest. The gap widened fractionally. "Assist," she commanded. He wedged his shoulder beside hers, adding his weight. Close again, pressed against her side. Solid, immovable. The faint hum of her suit vibrated against his skin. Unnerving intimacy born of desperation. They pushed together. The metal groaned louder. Sweat trickled down his temple despite the cold. "Come on, you piece of junk." With a final, grinding screech, the hatch gave way, swinging inward enough for them to squeeze through. "Proceed," she ordered, stepping back slightly. He scrambled through the opening into another corridor, looked slightly more intact. Dim emergency lights flickered here too. He turned, holding the light for her. She slipped through the gap with fluid grace, then immediately turned back to the damaged hatch. Securing aperture may slow structural collapse. She placed her hands on the heavy door, began forcing it closed. He watched, catching his breath. The sheer strength was intimidating. She wasn't just tall, she was powerful. The door scraped shut with a final groan. Silence fell, heavy and sudden, broken only by their breathing and the distant, dying rumble of the collapsing section behind them. "Assessment?" he asked, his voice hoarse. She turned from the door, her faceplate catching the beam of his light. Blank, unreadable, current location marginally stable, proceeding to safe zone Gamma remains priority. She started walking again. He followed, the beam of the light dancing ahead. The silence felt worse than the noise, more suspenseful. What next? They moved through several more corridors, encountering less damage. Signs of rushed evacuation, overturned carts, discarded tools, a single boot lying forlornly on the deck. No more bodies, small mercies. He noticed she was limping, almost imperceptible, but her usual fluid stride was slightly off. Even she's not indestructible. The thought was oddly reassuring. "You're injured?" he asked, keeping pace beside her. "Minor stress fracture sustained during forced entry," she replied without inflection. "Operational efficiency reduced by 4.7%. Acceptable parameters." Acceptable parameters, right. He wouldn't call a stress fracture acceptable. He stumbled slightly, catching himself before he fell. Fatigue was setting in hard, adrenaline wearing off. She paused, turning toward him. The blank faceplate seemed to scrutinize him in the dim light. "Your vital signs indicate increasing fatigue. Cardiovascular stress elevated." "No kidding, Sherlock. Been a long day." "Correction. Approximately 3.7 standard hours have elapsed since initial contact." "Feels longer," he muttered. He leaned against the wall, needing a moment. His head throbbed. She stepped closer, too close again. He instinctively tensed. She reached out, her fingers cool and firm against his neck, checking his pulse manually. Clinical, diagnostic. But the touch sent an unexpected jolt through him. Not unpleasant, just jarring, unexpectedly intimate in its impersonality. He pulled back slightly. "I'm fine, just need a second." Her hand dropped. Rest periods are contraindicated. Environmental stability remains uncertain. She held out a small, foil-wrapped packet. Nutrient paste. Consume for energy restoration. He eyed it suspiciously. Looked like military rations. Probably tasted like despair. "What is it?" "Standard emergency ration. Caloric density optimized for rapid absorption." Joy, he took the packet, tore it open, squeezed the gray sludge into his mouth. Texture like wet cement. Taste indescribable but vaguely chemical. He forced it down. Grimaced. Better, he asked sarcastically. Metabolic processes require time, she stated, literal as always. She turned and continued walking. He sighed, pushing off the wall. The paste sat heavy in his stomach. He followed her, the silence stretching again. They passed a series of numbered doors. Laboratories, crew quarters, hard to tell. Everything looked stripped, abandoned. They reached a wider area, maybe a small cargo bay or loading dock. Large bay doors sealed one end. Control panels flickered erratically nearby. Safe Zone Gamma Access Point, Unit 734 announced, moving toward the controls. She studied the readouts. Primary systems offline. Auxiliary power rerouting required. She began working on the panel, her movements efficient as always despite the slight limp. He watched, feeling useless. Just the guy holding the flashlight and eating paste. A low hum started up. Lights around the bay doors flickered, stabilized slightly. Power rerouted, she confirmed, initiating door cycle. She pressed a large button. Nothing happened. She pressed it again, still nothing. She ran a quick diagnostic. Mechanism jammed, physical obstruction suspected. Of course it is. This trip was cursed. Obstruction location. She consulted her scanner, pointed toward the upper track of the massive door. Approximately 7 meters elevation. Access via emergency ladder. She indicated a recessed ladder built into the wall nearby. He looked up. 7 meters wasn't insignificant, especially tired and sore. All right, what needs doing? Manual release lever engaged. Requires simultaneous override at the control panel. She tapped the console. I will operate the panel. You must access the release lever. Great climbing time. He walked over to the ladder, gripped the cold rungs, looked up into the shadows near the ceiling. Just pull a lever. Correct, lever is clearly marked. Actuate on my signal. Signal being. Verbal command, engage. Simple enough. If I don't fall, he started climbing. The rungs were cold, slightly slick with condensation. His arms protested. He focused on one rung at a time. Up, up. The floor receded below. Unit 734 was a dark shape by the glowing panel. He reached the top, finding a narrow catwalk running alongside the door track. Found the lever easily enough, heavy yellow paint, stenciled instructions almost worn off. It looked stiff. He braced himself, gripping the lever with both hands. In position, he called down. His voice echoed slightly in the large space. Stand by, she replied. He heard clicking sounds from the panel below, waited, muscles trembling slightly from exertion and tension. Engage. He threw his weight onto the lever. It didn't budge. Damn. He repositioned his grip, planted his feet firmly, pulled again with everything he had. Metal groaned. The lever moved slowly, stiffly downward. Felt like pulling against solid rust. Below, Unit 734 worked the controls. Sparks flew from the panel. The bay door shuddered violently, then began to grind open, moving agonizingly slow. Dust and debris rained down from the disturbed tracks. Maintain pressure, she called up. He held the lever down, muscles screaming. The door continued its slow ascent, felt like an eternity. He glanced down. She was still at the panel, silhouetted against its light, focused, intense. The door reached about halfway open, then stopped with a loud clang. The grinding ceased. Secondary jam detected, she reported. Lower mechanism. Are you kidding me? He let go of the lever. It stayed down, thankfully. He looked over the edge of the catwalk. The lower track was near the floor. He'd have to climb all the way back down. On my way, he grumbled, starting the descent. Much faster going down, but his arms felt like jelly. He practically slid down the last few rungs, landing heavily on the deck. Pain shot up his leg. He ignored it. Unit 734 was already kneeling near the bottom edge of the partially open door, scanner in hand. Obstruction confirmed. Warped structural beam lodged in the track. He peered into the gap, saw the twisted piece of metal she meant, looked solidly wedged. Can we cut it? Negative, required tools unavailable, brute force necessary. She stood up, looked at the beam, then at him. Coordinated effort required. More teamwork, lovely. What's the plan? I will attempt to dislodge the beam. You must apply counterpressure to the door to prevent uncontrolled closure should the mechanism release suddenly. He eyed the multi-ton door hanging precariously above them. Counterpressure, how? Utilize available debris. She indicated a pile of metal struts and plates nearby. Wedge materials into the gap to stabilize the door. Wright shoved scrap metal under a giant guillotine. Survival seemed increasingly unlikely. He grabbed a sturdy-looking strut. Heavy, awkward. Prepare, she ordered. She positioned herself near the jammed beam, placing her hands on the massive door itself, near the obstruction. She braced her feet. He dragged the strut toward the opening, heart pounding. This felt monumentally stupid. Apply pressure now, she commanded. He shoved the end of the strut into the gap between the bottom of the door and the deck, trying to wedge it against the track mechanism. It didn't feel secure. Insufficient, she stated. More stability required. He grabbed another, wider plate, shoving it in alongside the strut. Better, maybe. Ready, he grunted, stepping back slightly but keeping his hands near the makeshift supports. Unit 734 took a deep breath, or at least her suit shifted in a way that suggested it. Then she pushed, not against the beam, against the door itself, leveraging her strength against the jammed point. Metal screamed, the door shifted slightly. The beam groaned, he tensed, ready to jump back. She pushed again, a low grunt escaping her, the first sound he'd heard from her that wasn't perfectly modulated speech. It was startling, humanizing almost. The beam shifted with a grating screech. The door lurched downward an inch. His makeshift wedges groaned under the weight. Oh hell! Maintain support, she yelled, voice tight with strain. She repositioned, pushed again, harder. The beam scraped, then suddenly popped free with a loud bang, ricocheting off the far wall. The door dropped instantly. His wedges buckled, snapped. He scrambled back as the massive slab of metal slammed shut with a deafening crash that shook the entire bay. Dust billowed out. Silence, ringing in his ears. He coughed, waving dust away, looked at the sealed door, looked at Unit 734. She was standing, panting slightly, her hand pressed against the door where the beam had been. Her posture seemed less rigid, almost slumped. Well, he said, voice raspy, that didn't work. She turned slowly. Her faceplate was dusty but still reflected the dim light, hiding whatever expression might be behind it. Correction. Obstruction cleared. Door mechanism reset required. She walked back to the control panel. Her limp was more pronounced now. Cleared the obstruction by closing the door we needed open. Genius. Sarcasm felt inadequate. She worked the controls again, more clicking. A low whirring sound started. The door shuddered, then began to rise smoothly without grinding or protest this time. It ascended all the way, revealing a brightly lit, clean-looking corridor beyond. Filtered air, smelling faintly antiseptic, washed over them. Safe zone Gamma, finally. Proceed, she said, gesturing him forward. She didn't move immediately, leaning a hand against the control panel. He hesitated. You coming? Affirmative. Minor system adjustments required. She tapped something on her wrist device. He stepped through the doorway into the clean corridor. Bright white walls. Steady, silent hum felt like a different world. He turned back. She was still standing there, silhouetted against the light from the safe zone. She looked tired, possible. She straightened up, the movement seeming deliberate, and walked toward the threshold. As she stepped into the brighter light, he got a clearer, though still obscured, look at her suit. Dark gray, matte finish, complex jointing at the elbows and shoulders. The faceplate remained utterly blank, reflecting the white corridor lights. She stopped just inside the safe zone. The massive door behind them slid shut with a quiet hiss. Sealed. "Welcome to Safe Zone Gamma," she stated, her voice back to its usual flat monotone. "Medical facilities are located Sector Alpha 3. Sustenance reclamation in Delta 5. He just stared at her. They'd survived. Somehow. Crashed, navigated a dying ship, faced collapsing corridors, energy fields, failed machinery, near-crushing death. And she just listed facility locations. "Right," he said slowly. "Medical first, I think." He looked down at himself. Covered in dust, grime, sweat. Probably looked like hell. She looked pristine, apart from the dust on her faceplate and the barely noticeable limp. "Logical," she agreed. "Follow." She started walking down the white corridor. Her pace was slower now, the limp undeniable. He fell into step beside her. The silence felt different here. Less menacing, more awkward. They walked past sealed doors, observation windows looking into empty labs, everything sterile, unused, waiting. "So," he started, needing to break the silence. "Unit 734, is that your name, or just a number?" "Designation," she corrected. "Assigned identifier for operational parameters." "Right, not a name. Does your species have names?" She paused for a fraction of a second before replying. "Affirmative. Personal identifiers exist, not relevant to current mission parameters." "Current mission, keep the human alive." He glanced at her profile, still impossible to read anything. "What is the mission exactly, besides getting me here?" "Primary objective, assess and secure viable assets from derelict vessel Wanderer. Secondary objective, render aid to surviving personnel." "Assets?" he asked. "What kind of assets?" "Data cores, research materials, technology samples." "So scavenging, and I'm just baggage she had to render aid to." Somehow, that stung more than the clinical detachment. "You're alone?" he asked. "No backup?" "My unit operates autonomously. Support elements remain in orbital station." Autonomous, alone, injured, still functioning. He had to admit grudgingly it was impressive, stupidly dangerous but impressive. They reached a door marked Medical Bay Alpha 3. It slid open automatically. Inside, more sterile white, diagnostic beds, gleaming equipment, empty. "Proceed to diagnostic platform," she instructed, indicating a bed. "Automated systems will assess and treat injuries." He hesitated. "What about you, your leg?" "My condition is stable. Self-repair protocols initiated." She tapped her thigh lightly. "Your assessment takes priority." He walked over to the platform, sat on the edge. Smooth, cool surface. Scanner arms unfolded from the ceiling, bathing him in blue light. He felt a prick on his arm. Automated injector. Probably painkillers and broad-spectrum antibiotics. Standard procedure. Unit 734 stood near the entrance, observing, watching the diagnostic readouts displayed on a wall screen. Her blank faceplate tracked the data scrolling past. "Like watching paint dry, except the paint is my failing biology." The scan finished. A synthesized voice announced, "Subject Rorik 7, diagnosis, multiple contusions, minor lacerations, dehydration, elevated stress markers, treatment protocol initiated." Gels were applied to cuts, another injection. He felt warmth spread through his limbs. Pain dulled, fatigue lessened slightly. "Treatment complete," the voice announced. "Recommend rest period." He slid off the table, felt steadier. "Okay, now you," he gestured to the platform. She shook her head subtly. "Automated systems incompatible with my bioarchitecture." "So how do you fix a stress fracture? Just walk it off." Sarcasm slipped out, sharper than intended. "Suit systems facilitate accelerated tissue regeneration," she replied calmly. "Process requires temporary reduction in non-essential activity." Meaning rest, he translated, which you haven't done. Mission parameters prioritize asset security and survivor welfare. The survivor is fine now, he insisted, relatively, and the assets aren't going anywhere. Sit down. He pointed at a simple stool near the wall. She remained standing, facing him. The blank faceplate seemed to consider his order, an illogical command from damaged cargo. Your directive lacks tactical justification, she stated. It's not tactical, it's common sense. You're hurt. Pushing it makes it worse. Sit. He held her gaze, or where he imagined her gaze would be behind the reflective surface. Tension sparked between them, not physical danger this time, something else. Defiance, concern, hard to tell. She stood utterly still for a long moment. The silence hummed with the quiet thrum of the safe zone's life support. Then, slowly, deliberately, she turned and walked to the stool. Sat down. The movement seemed stiff, careful. He felt a ridiculous surge of triumph. Small victory, maybe pointless. He walked over, stopped a few feet away. Close enough to see the fine layer of dust still clinging to her suit, the faint scuff marks near her knee. Signs of the ordeal, cracks in the perfect machine facade. How long does self-repair take? He asked, his voice softer now. Optimal duration, 6.8 standard hours. Accelerated protocol under current conditions, estimated 2.1 hours. So sit tight for a couple of hours. He leaned against the diagnostic bed opposite her. The room felt very quiet, very empty, just the two of them, survivor and rescuer, human and whatever she was. She didn't respond, just sat there perfectly composed, facing forward, but her hands resting on her thighs seemed still, too still, not relaxed, tense. He watched her. The blank faceplate was maddening. What was going on behind it? Was she calculating mission probabilities, analyzing his illogical behavior, or just hurting? The silence stretched, became uncomfortable again. He shifted his weight. Look, he started, then stopped. What was he trying to say? Thanks. Sorry for being difficult cargo. Sorry you got hurt saving my sorry ass. Seemed inadequate. Your vocalization indicates intent to communicate, she observed, her head tilting slightly. State query or information. God, she's infuriating. And yet, he felt a strange pull, curiosity, maybe something else he didn't want to name. Just thinking. Cognitive processes noted. He almost laughed, almost. Dry humor felt wrong now, too raw, too close to something real. He pushed off the bed, walked closer, stopped directly in front of her stool. She had to tilt her head up slightly to keep her faceplate oriented toward him. Power dynamics shifted, slightly. This suit, he said, gesturing vaguely at her torso. It protects you, heals you. Does it feel anything? Tactile input sensors provide environmental data. Pain receptors correlate tissue damage to processing matrix. That's not what I meant. He crouched down slightly, bringing his eye level closer to hers, closer to that blank, reflective surface. He could almost see his own distorted reflection. Do you feel anything? Through the suit, through the processing matrix? She didn't answer immediately. The ambient hum of the station seemed louder. Data regarding internal subjective experience is classified, she said finally. Her voice was perfectly flat, but the pause felt significant. He stayed there, crouched, holding her unseen gaze. The air crackled with unspoken tension, physical proximity, emotional distance. A chasm between them, bridged only by shared survival and his stubborn refusal to accept her purely clinical role. Right, he said softly, classified. He reached out slowly, deliberately, hesitated an inch from her faceplate. What about this? Her head remained perfectly still. No flinch, no reaction, but he felt it, a change in the air, a tightening. His fingers brushed the cool, smooth surface. Not metal, some kind of composite, strange texture, sent another unexpected jolt through him, different from the diagnostic touch. This was intentional, questioning. He expected her to pull back, to issue a warning, Maintain distance. Tactile interaction unauthorized. She didn't move, didn't speak, just allowed the contact. Her stillness felt like a coiled spring. His fingers traced the curve of the faceplate down toward where a jawline might be, still smooth, seamless. He felt the faint vibration of her suit systems beneath his touch, felt the coolness of the material, felt the overwhelming sense of the other beneath it. "Why did you save me?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Not the crewman, me specifically. Was I a viable asset?" "Negative, your designation indicated non-essential personnel." Flat statement, brutal honesty. "Then why?" His fingers rested against the side of the faceplate. Another pause, longer this time. He could almost hear gears turning, or maybe that was just his own anxiety. "Directive conflict," she said finally. Her voice was there a flicker, a micro-variation in the monotone. Primary objective versus secondary objective. Probability analysis indicated. She trailed off. Directive conflict, that sounded almost human. Indecision, conflict. He leaned closer, drawn by that unexpected crack in her composure. Face inches from her faceplate. His reflection stared back, wide-eyed, grime-streaked. He saw the tension in his own jaw. Probability analysis indicated what? He pressed gently. Indicated expenditure of resources on non-essential personnel reduced overall mission success probability. She stated it like a fact, but the admission felt loaded. She saved him despite the logic. Why? The question hung in the air between them, heavy, unanswered. His fingers still rested against her faceplate, cool, smooth, alien. Yet the stillness beneath his touch felt intensely, overwhelmingly present, alive. He felt trapped again, not by debris or failing structures, by this fragile, dangerous connection forged in chaos, by the unknown behind the mask. A sudden impulse born of exhaustion, adrenaline come-down, and sheer, overwhelming curiosity surged through him. Survival instinct screamed caution. Logic dictated retreat. He ignored both. He closed the remaining distance, pressed his lips against the cool, smooth surface of her faceplate. A collision, not gentle, not romantic, desperate. A demand for something, an answer, a reaction, anything but blank neutrality. It was like kissing polished stone, cold, impersonal, yet underneath he felt the faint thrum of her systems, felt the solid reality of her presence, felt the impossible tension of the moment. He pulled back slightly, breathing hard. His own reflection stared back, shocked. What the hell did I just do? Unit 734 hadn't moved, hadn't reacted physically at all, still perfectly composed, but her faceplate impossibly seemed darker. Or was that just the light shifting, the reflection distorting? "Your action," she began, her voice absolutely level yet somehow different, lower, tighter, "is categorized as illogical, high-risk emotional transference." He waited for the cease and desist, the reprimand, the threat neutralized. It didn't come. She lifted a hand slowly, touched the spot on her faceplate where his lips had been. Her fingers, clad in the same dark, seamless material, lingered there for a moment. An exploratory touch, clinical or something else. "Analysis," she continued, her voice retaining that subtle, strained quality, "indicates potential for mission parameter compromise." Her hand dropped back to her lap, clenched slightly into a fist, a tiny, almost imperceptible movement, but he saw it. He didn't move away, stayed close. The danger felt different now, not physical, emotional, far more terrifying. He met his own gaze in her reflection, accepted it, the fear, the uncertainty, the sheer, stupid risk of whatever this was becoming. She finally looked away from the spot her fingers had touched, her faceplate angling back toward his face. The blank surface felt less like a barrier, more like a veil, thinner now, fragile. "Just put it in," she said, the words startlingly out of context. He blinked, confused. She gestured almost imperceptibly toward the nutrient-paste packet he must have dropped nearby during the earlier chaos. The data suggests suboptimal energy levels persist. Consume the remainder. It wasn't the response he expected. So mundane, so her. Yet the timing, the slight break in her voice before she spoke, the way she avoided addressing the kiss directly, it felt like deflection, like coping. He didn't reach for the paste, didn't break the proximity. What's the worst that could happen? He asked, echoing the title she hadn't actually said but that hung in the air from his reckless action. A challenge, a question, a dare. She didn't answer immediately. The silence stretched, thick with the charge of the kiss, the weight of her hidden conflict, his exposed vulnerability. Then very softly, almost too low to hear, she said, "Contamination." One word, flatly delivered, yet it hung between them, ambiguous. Contamination of the mission, contamination of her logic, or contamination of something else, something personal, something she wasn't supposed to feel. He held her unseen gaze through the dark reflection. The danger was real, palpable, but leaving felt impossible now. He had touched the machine and felt the ghost within. The connection was forged, ambiguous, terrifying, irrevocable.